Because we have added Spring Security to our project, now all web service entry points that we have created are automatically protected. If we attempt to send the HTTP request to one of those entry points, the request will not be authorized and we will get 401 error message. I'll show you what I mean. So if I start my application, so my application is started, I'll bring up Postman, and now I will send a request to create a new account. So that will be HTTP post request to /users. Now, if I send this request, I'm getting 401 HTTP status code, which means that the request is not authorized. And so in this video, we're going to create a new class, which will define at least one method, like sign up method, that users can use to create a new account. And that method will be public. And all other web service entry points, they will be protected and require authorization and authentication. So I'll go to my Java packages and I will create a new class and I'll put it under security package. I will name this class web security and click on finish. Okay, so because this class is going to be a special class, it will contain some configuration. It needs to have an annotation enable web security, and I will import web security. And this class will need to extend web security configurer adapter. Web security configurer adapter comes from a Spring package. We do not have to create that adapter ourselves. We're just taking advantage of ready-to-use Spring Security classes. And I will paste a little code snippet, which is a constructor for this web security class. Let me import user details, and notice that user details will come from Spring Security core user details. This is an interface which is given to us by Spring Security. So I'll import that interface. I will import the bcrypt password encoder, which is responsible for encoding our password. Okay, and now I will need to override a couple of methods, and I'll paste them here, and I'll walk you through what they do. Let me import HTTP security, again from Spring Framework security package. And let me import HTTP methods. Import authentication manager builder. Okay, so we are overriding a couple of methods because we are extending web security configurer adapter. And the first method, which is called configure, and it takes in HTTP security as a method argument, is needed to configure some of the web service entry points in our application as public and some of them as protected. For example, in this example, I'm configuring HTTP post request, which will be sent to a sign up URL. Let me at this moment provide the URL endpoint hard-coded users like this. So an HTTP post request that is sent to /users, and we know that if we send HTTP post request to this web service endpoint, a code will be triggered to create a new user account with our application. So this request should be authorized. We will permit this operation, and we use permit all for that. Now, any other request will need to be authenticated. Okay, and I will save this. There are other configuration options that we will need to provide for our application to be able to work with web tokens, but we will add them a little bit later. And the second method, we are setting up authentication manager builder, the user details interface that we will use, and we are also setting an encryption method that we use to protect user password. Again, we are just taking advantage of Spring Security Framework. We're not going to create authentication manager builder ourselves. It all comes from Spring Security, and many things are being done for us under the hood. All we need to do is to tell which interface we are using for user details service and what encryption method we use to protect our password. And the encryption method we used also comes from Spring. It comes from the Spring Framework Security Crypto. So now when we've added this, we should be able to run our application, and one of the web service entry points, which is /users, that responds to HTTP post request, should be public, and all other web service entry points should be protected. And since I have mentioned the user details interface, which we have just imported that comes from Spring Security package, let me update my user service interface by making it extend user details service that comes from Spring Security package. So I will copy the name of this interface and I will go to my user service interface and I will make my interface extend user details service which comes from Spring Security package. Like this. Okay, now I will go to user service implementation class, and because my user service now extends the user details service that comes from Spring framework, I will need to implement one method which user details service provides. I'll add an implemented method here. I will add implementation later on. At this moment, I will just leave it as is. So I will save this code and I will go back to web security class and will make it use my custom user details interface. So I will delete the user details interface that comes from Spring Security package. And now I will change this one to user details because my interface is called user service. So I'll go back to web security and I will use user service instead. Okay, so now I'll import user service and I'll update the constructor as well. And here we go. Now we have our custom implementation of user service, which extends the interface that comes from Spring Security package. User details service comes from Spring Security package. And we are using it with the web security class that comes from Spring Security package as well. Okay, so let's continue. And I will run my application and see if I can send HTTP post request to /users entry point. Okay, my application is up and running. I'll switch to Postman. And here's my HTTP post request to /users. And this is the body of HTTP request. I will now send it. And I get back a successful response. The error message says that a record already exists, but the point is that the HTTP status code is no longer 401. The request is now authorized. So if I change the username, let's say the email address is test9@test.com, which should not exist in our database. So I'll send it and now I get a successful response. But if I try any other HTTP request, for example, let's get a list of all users and send it, we should get back HTTP status code that says that the access to this endpoint is forbidden. And if I try to get a specific user, for example, user with specific ID, or we can copy an ID from here and send that request, I should get the same HTTP status code that the access to that web service entry point is forbidden. Here we go. So Spring Security works very well for us. We were able to protect all web service entry points and make one entry point public. And now let's look into a database and see how the encrypted password look like. So here's my database. I will run the use photo app command first. And now I will select all from users and run this command. And here we go. This is a list of our users and this is the last record. It has the ID 105 and this is the encrypted password. As you can see, the password is protected well enough and it's no longer stored as a plain text in our database table. Okay, so let's continue.